Hi, everybody. This is Craig Helm. I'm a real estate professional here in Central Florida with the Home for Sale Miami, Florida Incorporated. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to play a short video that was uh, presented by the Vice President for Economic Research with the National Association of Realtors. And what it was going over the economic and real estate outlook ending this past December 2022, and also projecting insight into the real estate market for 2023 and beyond. So if you bear with me, I'll go ahead and play that webinar right now and be back with you very shortly.
And here we are. So very good. So let's first start with the annual home sales. It looks like once we tally up the November data, which we are almost completing, along with the December, which is ongoing, it looks like the sales will be down 16% this year compared to last year. And of course, last year was somewhat of an abnormally high figures because people were still enjoying those exceptionally low mortgage rates. This is a chart, 22-year chart, showing the housing market trend. Right in the middle of the graph is the housing market bust that happened along with the foreclosure crisis. It was a tough struggle for people in the industry back in 2007 all the way to almost 2013. So a span of almost 5 years, a bit of struggle out there. And this year, 22 figures are almost similar to what happened back in 2014, 2013 period. So after sort of steady gains and exceptional performance of last year, 2021, this year is now getting back to 2014 conditions. If we look at the monthly data, as you see on the arrow, this is this year. From the beginning of the year, which actually was decent. This year, January, was a decent figure, but then decline onwards. So you see this graph where we start from 2019, pre-COVID days. So normal pre-COVID activity. Then we had a couple of months of a lockdown. Then once the lockdown finished, the record low mortgage rate, and also people wanted to have that little more elbow space, so they want to have a larger size home, so that fueled the demand. But as you can see, on a monthly basis, trending down, I would not be surprised if we have 2 additional months of a decline before setting the condition for improvement next year. If we look at the percent change, a little different angle. So I put this not as an actual sales figure, but the percent change from the prior year. So pre-COVID condition, percent changes are very mild. Then we really had a boom right in the middle, COVID real estate boom. And then this year, because of the rising mortgage rate throughout, we have seen the sales coming down. And currently, it is about 30% below 1 year ago. So these are a sizable decline from the boom condition of just 1 year ago. The annual home sales for new home construction. So these are new home construction, which is about 10 to 15% of the market. 85 to 90% of the transactions are in the existing home sales. New home sales often shows up in the multiple listing service, so it gets clicked. Some do not, but the census collect information on newly constructed home sales. And somewhat similar decline, down 17% this year, or at least projected to be. But it is down only back to pre-COVID days, not to 2014. So you say, well, is the new home sales market actually holding up better than the existing home sales market? And the answer is really related to the new home sales really took a dive. It really took a dive during the foreclosure crisis and never fully tried to recover from that. And hence, they had a low base reference to compare. And in fact, let me show you this new home construction, because you have to construct a home before you can do the newly constructed home sales. And this is a very, very long chart starting from 1960. So a 60-year time span. So some years goes up and down to show that housing market is a cyclical business, goes up and down. But one thing to note is that the long-term average is about 1 million a year. But look what happened from 2007 onwards. It's been significantly below that condition until just last year. So what this is telling is that we had a massive housing shortage because of the underproduction prior to last year. Just cumulative, almost decade-long underproduction leading to housing shortage. And of course, the buyers have retreated now. But hypothetically, if the mortgage rate goes down meaningfully and the buyers return, we could again encounter another housing shortage unless we really ramp up production or possibly even convert some of the empty commercial buildings, say office buildings, disused office building, into residential units through some tax credit or government subsidy aspect, because we're gonna again encounter potentially a housing shortage, because you see on the chart massive underproduction from 2007 right up until pre-COVID days. In the meantime, home prices have risen sizably. So this is a long-term trend on home prices from the year 2000. The median price, you can say this year, was around $400,000. There's always some seasonal fluctuation. The median price tends to be higher in spring and summer months because typically a larger size homes gets transacted during spring and summer months. Essentially, the households with school-age kid, they want to make the transition before the school year. They need a larger size home. While in the winter months, more smaller size homes get sold, so the median price tends to be lower. So there's always this seasonal pattern. But this year, you can say it's around 400,000. It's hard to believe. Back in the year 2000, median home price was $150,000. So someone who purchased that, you went through a little cycle, but still the homeowner will be well ahead in terms of the housing wealth condition because of this price trend. Now, one of these spectacular market, just whether economy, housing market, at least for the property owners, not the renters. Renters are completely frustrated in Austin, but you say, Austin, how is it doing? You say economy is booming, the real estate market is strong, and this is showing what happened in Austin. And one of the forecast items that I want to share with you today is trying to identify which metro market in America could possibly resemble something like the next Austin, because you see the trend, just quite amazing. $150,000 back in the year 2000, essentially the national median home price, but now at $600,000 prices. Before we talk about the next Austin, it's worth mentioning this, where our president Parcell is from, Salt Lake City, Provo, Ogden, that region in the Utah region were equally impressive. So as we are trying to find the next Austin, you may actually say, well, we are also trying to find the next Salt Lake City in terms of economic performance along with home price performance. So given the prices are so high, before turning or trying to identify the next Austin, I think the natural question many consumers have, and these are very valid questions, because they remember perhaps their family members who purchased back in the last housing cycle and went through that crushing, very painful foreclosure crisis, and no one should experience that. So the key question is, will home prices potentially crash given the strong run-up in home prices across the country in recent couple of years? So let's look at the fundamentals. So one thing to note is that back in 2008 period, there was an 8 million job losses in a single year. There was a foreclosure crisis, 8 million job losses. Today, there is some layoffs in the mortgage industry, maybe the technology industry is stopped hiring people, but if you look at the net, it is still a job creating conditions. So one can say there's not a net job cuts as of moment. And also in terms of the total number of people with job, you can see there's over 20 million more people working today, whether we are looking at the payroll jobs or household survey, which is just asking people whether you have a job, because some people do not receive W-2 statement salary. So 20 million more jobs today. Subprime mortgages, those shady, risky, self-imploding mortgages, widely prevalent. No income documentation, here's the loan during the last cycle. This time around, people have to meet the new regulation, ability to repay. What a common sense. Ability to repay before you get a mortgage, and therefore we don't have those risky mortgages. And also the home construction activity. 5 year preceding to the housing cycle, one can see that is a great underproduction, again, explaining why we had the housing shortage right before COVID and exacerbated housing shortage during the boom, even though we have seen some buyers retreat currently. Inventory conditions. Back then, about 4 million homes on the market. Today, only 1 million homes on the market. Completely different fundamentals, and one looks at the mortgage delinquency, much lower, homes under foreclosures, much lower this housing cycle. And in fact, here is the mortgage delinquency chart. People who are late on their mortgage for more than 90 days, so they're in trouble, or homes under foreclosures. So you can see currently it is at historic low. Look at the middle of the graph when the mortgages were imploding, how high the mortgage delinquency rates were. And of course, we had somewhat of an increase during the COVID lockdown when people lost jobs. But you can see today, we are essentially at historically low levels. Our MLS data from multiple listing service, how many homes are under foreclosures or needing a short sale approval from the bank? Minimal, 1% of total transactions. Again, completely different fundamental backdrop in the marketplace. And furthermore, one looks at the home value asset valuation, which is represented by the blue line. Essentially, the home prices across all the properties in America versus the mortgage debt, which is the orange line. So last cycle, mortgage debt was rising. In fact, it was doubling in over a 7 year prior to that, and home prices rose because mortgage debt was rising. People were taking out a large loan to buy a property. But this time around, as you can see, mortgage debt increase is minimal, while the home prices have risen significantly, which is implying that home price increases are not related to mortgages, but related to housing shortage. So we have to address potential housing shortage, lack of housing supply, because this is leading to homeowners smiling, but essentially possibly making the home ownership dream, the dream of home ownership for renters, more and more difficult. So we have to increase supply to provide more access opportunity for home ownership. Now, as of mid-December, the fresh data in our multiple listing service is not comprehensive, but a good sample of it. Despite all the talk about a housing price crash, the median prices are still up from 1 year ago by 4.8%. But for the people in the industry, painful. Sales are down 34.9%, contract signing down 36%. And then as you go down, one interesting part is on the very last line, new fresh listings coming onto the market. It is actually fewer now compared to this time 1 year ago. So even though we do have a little more inventory because homes are sitting on the market a little longer, fresh listings are not popping out. So if we don't have supply, the probability of a price crash is essentially very small given the lack of supply. Now there are some hopeful signs related to what's going to happen early next year, because the mortgage rates are the lifeblood that drives the home sales. And it has been falling for the 4 straight weeks, and I think it will be 5th straight weeks based on this morning's data where consumer price inflation appears to be coming down a little more, which means the Federal Reserve does not have to be so aggressive going forward. Federal Reserve will raise interest rates, but that's already priced in. So the mortgage rate already knows that. They want to know sort of how aggressive or non-aggressive Fed will be throughout next year. And with coming consumer price inflation, I think the mortgage rate could go down even further. And here's an indication that it could decline even more meaningfully, because on the left-hand side shows the relationship between 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, that's the red line, while the blue line is 10-year Treasury yield. And two lines move very similarly together. But there is a gap. And look at the gap, which is represented on the right-hand side, the spread. It is abnormally high today. So it's inevitable this abnormal high spread will begin to narrow, which means that there's even further room for mortgage rates to decline in the upcoming months as this spread narrows. Now, without going into all the details, why it could or what's causing the large spread, one can see that we are in this abnormal situation. And as the mortgage market normalizes, there's an opportunity for mortgage rates to decline even further. Unemployment rate back to normal. Payroll jobs, record high number of people on payroll. But based on the trend line, we are not to the blue line. The blue line would represent the trend, but we are still at record high. Here's an interesting graph. Everyone can identify your state, and green color state is good. This shows how much job creation compared to March 20, right before COVID hit the country. So the green line shows that, or the green color, for example, state of Utah, I hope that you can identify it, is showing 7.68%. 7.68% more job in Utah compared to March 2020 now. Florida is doing well, Texas is doing well, generally Rocky Mountain State and Southern states doing well. New York is still down 1.98% compared to pre-COVID days. So some variation across the country. So if you want to identify the next Austin or next Salt Lake City, look for the green color state, that will be the one. Who is the better football team, Georgia or Michigan? Well, we have to wait. But in terms of the job market condition, Georgia is clearly outperforming Michigan. Georgia is red, Michigan is blue. This is total number of jobs in each state from year 2000. As it shows that in some states, it steadily outperform others, such that Georgia, which had about 1 million fewer jobs 20 years ago, now has about 1 million more jobs today compared to Michigan. So certainly Georgia is doing exceptionally well in this comparison. Office vacancy rate rising. I am in Washington, D.C. You can see the traffic behind me, fairly light. I guess you cannot compare, but from my comparison compared to pre-COVID, fairly light, implying that there is still work from home, flexibility, remote work, and one wonders how this will change some of the residential choices. Would the outer suburbs remain popular, knowing they don't have to commute to work every single day? So the next Austin or like next city, we have identified the 10 markets, and here it is. It's on the map. Southern states, generally speaking, it had to meet the criteria of reasonable affordability, in-migration, high-paying jobs being created recently, those factors. And in fact, those on the map, this will be the list. Atlanta, Raleigh, Dallas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Huntsville, Alabama, Jacksonville, San Antonio, Knoxville. Of course, we will be wrong, but I think that, a good number of these cities here is represented. I think we'll outperform in 2023 and probably going even into the future years. Now, the mortgage rate forecast. I think the peak has already occurred and we are on a downward path, but we will not go back to 3% mortgage rates. I think we will settle down around 5.5% by end of next year. This time next year will be 5.5%, but that is clearly an improvement from 7% we have experienced. And home sales condition, I believe that we are near cyclical low. First quarter looks to be difficult as well, some lag impact, but I think there will be steady increases onwards. Home prices, after the big boom of the past 2 years, I think it's going to be essentially no change, which means half of the country will see some growth, other half of the country will see some decline. those top 10 markets naturally would be in the positive territory in my forecast. So my final slide before we turn to the panelists is that the blue line represent what already occurred. And the 2022, we are almost done. I think the sales will be down about 16%. But next year, given that we are starting from more lower sales activity than recovering, I think the sales will still be down 7%. No meaningful changes in prices in most parts of the country. But by 2024, I think things will begin to do some catch-up housing demand, and things will steadily improve from that point onward.
Hey, I'm back with you. This is Craig Helm. Thank you for watching the presentation that was presented by Dr. Lawrence Young of the National Association of Realtors. He is the chief economist and senior vice president for research. And the information that he gave was very useful, and I hope you found it as useful as well. And I'm going to be doing more of these videos as time goes on, so stay tuned. And you see this video on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell for for future videos that come out that you subscribe to. And I can be reached anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday Eastern Standard Time, 407-676-4109. And I'd be glad to answer any of your questions that you might have. And I also find off-market properties. These are properties that can be vacant and absentee owned, and which means that the seller would not have any emotional attachment to the property, and your ability to negotiate a much better deal would be there for you, and you wouldn't have the competition with other buyers as well. So I can do that for you. And also any other questions related to real estate, and if you're looking for any decent contractors in the Central Florida area that have a good background and a good track record, I can help you out there as well. So until then, this is Craig Helm, and have yourself a great rest of the week. So long for now.